Walk into any city on Earth and within a few minutes you'll see it. A cigarette outside an office building, a cigar on a balcony, smoke curling out of a bar doorway at 1 a.m. The habit feels modern. It belongs in our minds to warning labels, tax stamps, corner stores, and neon after dark. But smoking is older than all of that. It reaches back past empires, past writing, past metal, into a world of stone tools, open camps, and people who had never seen a road. So when did ancient humans start smoking? The answer begins in the Americas, because that is where tobacco smoking began. Tobacco is a New World plant, and the oldest direct evidence for humans using it comes from deep prehistory in North America. In 2021, archaeologists at the Wishbone site in Utah identified charred tobacco seeds in a hearth dated to about 12,300 years ago. Those seeds are the earliest hard evidence of tobacco use ever found. Long before kingdoms, long before cities, long before anyone built a monument or recorded a law, people were already sitting by a fire with tobacco. That single discovery changes the scale of the story. Most people place smoking late. They imagine it appearing after farming, after villages, after settled life creates enough spare time for luxuries. Tobacco destroys that picture. Its use appears astonishingly early. These were hunter-gatherers living at the end of the Ice Age. Mammoths had only recently disappeared from much of the continent. Glaciers still shaped the land, and somewhere in that cold world, humans were collecting, carrying, burning, and inhaling tobacco. That means smoking was never just a byproduct of civilization. It was older than civilization. The first people who used tobacco did not need a state, a market, or a city to discover what it could do. They needed a plant, a fire, and a body that could feel the difference. That is the deeper point here. Smoking did not emerge from luxury. It emerged from attention. Ancient people were extraordinary observers of the natural world. They knew which roots fed you, which leaves healed you, which bark poisoned you, and which plants changed the way your mind and muscles felt. A species that survived by noticing everything was always going to notice tobacco. And tobacco was impossible to ignore. Nicotine hits fast. It changes mood, sharpens attention, steadies the body, and creates craving with ruthless efficiency. Ancient humans did not need chemistry to explain it. One experience was enough. This plant did something. It left a mark. The next step was obvious. Remember the plant. Find it again. Use it at the right time. Teach someone else. That is how a substance enters human life. First there is sensation, then memory, then repetition, then culture builds itself around repetition. The story starts with the plant itself. Tobacco belongs to the genus Nicotiana, and several species are native to the Americas. In western North America, one likely early species was Nicotiana attenuata, often called coyote tobacco, a wild plant that could be gathered without farming. You did not need fields or irrigation to get it. You needed knowledge, and hunter-gatherers possessed that knowledge in astonishing detail. They moved through landscapes the way modern people move through supermarkets and phone screens. Every slope, wash, creek bed, and seasonal patch carried information. Food, medicine, danger, fuel, fibers, pigments, glue, scent, intoxication. The land was not scenery, it was a library. So picture the scene clearly. A small group settles in for the night. Firelight pushes back the dark. Stone tools lie nearby. Hides crackle as someone shifts position. The air smells of ash, meat, and dust. Then tobacco enters the fire, or leaves are heated in a way that sends up thick, bitter smoke. There is coughing, laughter follows. Then comes the change, a little dizziness, a little calm, a sharpened edge to awareness. Someone remembers the sensation. Someone remembers where the plant grows. Someone decides this belongs in certain moments and not others. That is the birth of a habit. And once a habit repeats, it never stays purely chemical. It becomes social. People attach rules to it. This plant is used after hunting. This plant is shared with guests. This plant belongs to elders. This plant is for healing. This plant is for prayer. A behavior becomes visible often enough that children learn it by watching. Then the act hardens into custom. By the time Europeans arrived in the Americas, smoking was already ancient and deeply woven into life across enormous distances. Indigenous peoples from North America to South America used tobacco in ways that were social, medicinal, diplomatic, and sacred. It was smoked in pipes, cigars, reed tubes, and rolled leaves. It was chewed, snuffed, drunk in liquid preparations, blown over patients, offered to spirits, and carried into negotiations. Europeans did not bring smoking to the Americas. They entered a continent where smoking already had thousands of years behind it. One of the clearest clues in that long history is the pipe. Archaeologists have found ancient smoking pipes across the Americas, and some date back at least 3,000 years. In the southeast, on the plains, in the southwest, and across Mesoamerica, smoking technology appears again and again. That matters because tools reveal repetition. A one-time experiment leaves almost nothing behind. A pipe means design. Design means the act happened often enough to deserve equipment, and once a behavior has dedicated equipment, it is already part of culture. That is a major threshold in human history. A pipe controls the burn. It reduces waste. It makes tobacco portable. It turns a loose act into a repeatable one. The same pattern appears everywhere humans commit themselves to a practice. Cooking changes once there are pots. Music changes once there are instruments. Hunting changes once there are specialized points and traps. Smoking changes once there is a tool built for smoke. Tools also make habits teachable. A child can watch an elder shape a bowl, pack plant matter, tend an ember, inhale carefully, pass the object, and repeat the sequence. Technique becomes visible. Rules become visible too. Who smokes, when they smoke, what words accompany the act. Whether it is casual, medicinal, or ceremonial, whether everyone participates or only a few, the object in the hand carries all of that with it. That is why tobacco was never just about pleasure. In many indigenous traditions, it carried authority. Smoke was a vehicle. It marked prayer, healing, exchange, obligation, and contact with forces beyond ordinary life. Among numerous societies, tobacco smoke was blown over the sick, offered upward, or shared ceremonially to seal truth and peace. The familiar image of the peace pipe has been flattened by popular culture, but it points to something real. Smoking could formalize a moment. It could turn speech into commitment. It could turn a meeting into an agreement that carried spiritual weight. Uses like that do not appear overnight. Ritual grows through repetition across generations. A plant becomes associated with certain people, then certain places, then certain occasions. Healers work with it. Elders regulate it. Stories explain it. Restrictions develop around it. At that point, tobacco is no longer just a stimulant. It has become part of the architecture of society. And tobacco fit that role perfectly because it was both practical and powerful. It could be grown, dried, stored, traded, and carried. Its effects were immediate and unmistakable. Most ritual substances are difficult to access or tied to narrow conditions. Tobacco moved easily between daily life and sacred life. A plant with that combination spreads fast, lasts long, and gathers meaning everywhere it goes. Then cultivation pushed the relationship further. Once people began growing tobacco deliberately, the whole arrangement changed from gathering to management. Cultivation increases supply. It encourages selection. Stronger leaves get favored. Better-tasting plants get replanted. More potent varieties survive because humans choose them. Over time, tobacco stops being just something found in the landscape. It becomes something shaped by intention. That is where the deeper pattern appears. We usually talk about domestication as if it belongs to wheat, dogs, cattle, and maize. Psychoactive plants entered the same kind of partnership. People selected them, moved them, protected them, improved them, and built routines around them. The plant became more useful to humans. Humans reorganized behavior around the plant. They planted it, dried it, traded it, rationed it, taxed it, ritualized it, and eventually depended on it. Domestication runs both ways. Then the Atlantic world took that ancient relationship and detonated its scale. When Europeans reached the Caribbean and the mainland Americas, they encountered people smoking and found it strange, dramatic, and unsettling. Spanish observers described men carrying rolls of burning leaves and drawing smoke into their bodies. Others recorded pipes and formal ceremonial use. Strangeness did not last. Europeans copied the habit with astonishing speed. Tobacco crossed the Atlantic in the 16th century and then surged through Spain, Portugal, France, England, the Ottoman world, Africa, India, China, and beyond. A practice born around ancient American fires became global. And once it went global, it became one of the most profitable and destructive commodities in human history. States taxed it, merchants built fortunes on it, plantations expanded for it, enslaved labor sustained it, physicians praised it before later condemning it, rulers tried to regulate it, clerics argued over it, entire economies bent around it, millions became addicted to it. Smoking moved from sacred space to mass dependence with terrifying speed. That explosion only makes sense if you understand the beginning. Tobacco was unstoppable because it sat at the intersection of biology and culture. It seized the nervous system and then wrapped itself in meaning, a substance that changes your state in minutes and can be attached to hospitality, prayer, diplomacy, stress relief, healing, identity, and status is a substance built to spread. Fashion helped later. Chemistry did the heavy lifting from the start. Which brings us back to the ancient question. Did Ice Age people in Utah have cigarettes? Of course not. No filter filters, no paper packs, no branded cartons, no corner stores, but they had the essential thing, a psychoactive plant and the human willingness to return to it. The charred seeds at Wishbone are small, but their meaning is enormous. They show that tobacco use was already present more than 12 millennia ago, and where tobacco is used repeatedly, smoking becomes one of the simplest and most effective ways to unlock its effects. The exact technique of those earliest users is the one place where the evidence leaves room for debate. They used tobacco in ways that made it worth carrying to a hearth, preserving in memory and repeating across time. That fact is enough to anchor the story. By 12,300 years ago, humans in the Americas had already entered into a relationship with tobacco, and that relationship became one of the longest chemical partnerships in our species' history. For thousands of years, tobacco remained in the Americas. That matters more than it seems. No Egyptian pharaoh smoked tobacco. No Roman senator passed around a cigar. No Bronze Age king kept a tobacco pipe beside his bed. No Neanderthal in Europe packed a bowl. Tobacco smoking belongs first, completely and decisively to the indigenous peoples of the Americas. The rest of the world learned it later. That correction matters because modern life flattens the past. It makes global habits feel inevitable, as if coffee, sugar, tobacco, and chocolate were always everywhere. They were not. Each came from a particular landscape and from people who first learned what that plant could do. In the case of tobacco, the first masters were indigenous Americans who knew how to find it, prepare it, cultivate it, regulate it, and give it meaning. The oldest smokers were not standing under a street lamp outside a convenience store. They were sitting near hearths on a continent with no cities, no steel, no writing, and no roads, feeding leaves into firelight and discovering a sensation that would outlive kingdoms. That is the real age of smoking. It is not a side note in the story of modern vice. It is a prehistoric human story about curiosity, chemistry, memory, ritual, and repetition. A plant grew wild in the Americas. Human beings learned its power. They carried that knowledge across generations until it became tradition. Then the world changed around that tradition, and the tradition conquered the world. So when did ancient humans start smoking? At least 12,300 years ago, beside an Ice Age hearth in North America, with tobacco in the fire and smoke in the dark.